Welcome to ACF Chefs Forum. We appreciate all of you tuning in today for this webinar, No Meat, No Dairy, No Gluten, No Problem, as we learn how to expand your menus for all dietary preferences. Now, more than ever, and especially during this difficult time, it's important for culinarians to connect, to share, and to offer inspiration and mentorship, which is exactly why we're excited to have the Miners team here today with us to share information just for you, the future leaders of the food service industry. Before we begin, as a note, we will be taking questions from you, the viewers, as we are able. Please use the chat function to collaborate with other chefs and the Q&A function to pose questions to today's speakers. So let's get the conversation going in the chat. Please tell us where you're tuning in from today. I'm Jackie Pressinger, American Culinary Federation's Director of Strategic Partnerships, and I'm honored to introduce our moderator today to kick off the presentation. Maggie Ike is Marketing Associate with Nestle Professional, and at this time, I'll pass it over to Maggie to introduce today's presenters and to begin the session. Thank you, Maggie.
Thank you so much, Jackie. I'm going to take a quick second to share my screen with everyone, and then I'm going to take a minute to introduce there we go. So again, thank you for that introduction, Jackie. Hello, and again, everyone. My name is Maggie Ike, and I am the Marketing Associate at Miners. And I support Miners here at Nestle Professional. Myself and my coworkers, we're really excited to be here and be part of the ACF webinar series. Today, we're going to share with you some new information, some new tools, and some great recipe inspiration that we hope that will really help you continue to provide great solutions for all dietary preferences. I like to say, just as Jackie said, no meat, no dairy, no gluten, no problem. We know at Miners that flavor means everything. We also know that these dietary trends can be confusing. We've heard it from our chef team. We've heard it from many customers. You know, new diets are coming out there all the time, and how do you know which ones are going to grow on menus, and how can we continue to cut through that confusion to really identify those ones that will be ideal for the most customers. So today I think that is our goal. We're going to have a little bit more clear information on some of the most popular dietary trends out there and really help you set a table for everyone at your operation. At a high level today, we're going to hear about some of the most popular eating trends. We're also going to talk through how those trends are appearing on menus and really what are diners looking for. Then I'm going to talk through some of the tools that Miners has created to help make those eating trends and navigating those specialty customized diets a little easier with just some simple tweaks to your menu items. And then finally, we're going to wrap it up today with a really awesome cooking demonstration from culinary innovation chef Logan McCoy. Right now, though, I have the pleasure of introducing Cassie Hoover. She is Nestle Professional's Nutrition and Sustainability Manager. Cassie has more than 10 years experience in nutrition, health, and wellness efforts here at Nestle. In her current role, she leverages her science-based training and experience as a dietitian alongside her knowledge of consumer behaviors and trends to establish health, wellness, and sustainability roadmaps for all the brands within Nestle Professional. Her work includes collaborating with a multitude of teams, including marketing, sales, product development, regulatory, government affairs, and all of this she does to incorporate health and wellness into our new and reformulated products, communications, and partnerships. Cassie, thank you so much for being with us today, and I will now turn it over to you.
Thanks, Maggie. So excited to be here, and thanks for that great introduction. I thought what could be fun for our audience today is to start with a poll. We're talking a little bit about some of the most popular eating trends, how people are eating, and so I'm curious to hear from all of you if any of you have tried a new eating approach in the last year. Could be something quite common like gluten-free, maybe you tried intermittent fasting, maybe you did a juice cleanse, or maybe you didn't. That's quite fine. What I'm curious to know here is sort of how you compare with some of the data that we have for that sort of general population, because I think that will be just quite interesting. You're a really specialized group of folks, and I think that could be just kind of cool to see. So I'm just sort of letting the numbers roll in before I move on. Thank you all for participating. Got a couple more coming in here. Thanks, guys. All right, it looks like we have about 80% of folks voting, so I'll end it so we can move on. What I'm seeing is about 70% of you, 71% of you have tried. Actually, I'll share the results so you can see them too. About 71% of you have tried a new approach to eating in the last 12 months, which is actually really interesting, because as we go to the next slide, what you'll see is that the data that we have for the general population is about 50% of people have tried any specific eating approach in the last 12 months. So actually a little bit less than this audience. And that I think could be for a couple of reasons. One is, you actually can't see the citation on this slide, but this data is actually from 2019. And prior to the pandemic, we hadn't seen a really big change in this number, and this group hasn't released new numbers for the 2020 period yet. So I'm curious to see if that number will go up, sort of similar to this audience. It could also be a bit of an age difference. So something that's interesting behind these numbers is if you look at Gen Z, about 70% of them say that they've tried a new diet, and it sort of ticks down through the generations from there. So the boomers, it's only about 35% say that they've tried anything in the last, or a new diet in that last year or so. So there's some interesting nuance in the data that I think could help explain some of those differences. Another thing I think that's always interesting to chat about when we talk about eating approaches is why people are trying them. So that could be sort of interesting to learn. If you want to share, please feel free to sort of chat that. But what we know from the general population is that most people are just trying to eat well. You know, at one point in time, it was sort of all about weight loss, and that was a really big focus. But now it's really just about sort of a general, well-balanced approach to eating, and that's sort of what people are looking for. The younger generations, we're also seeing sort of a motivation around a lifestyle. So something, maybe I'm eating in a more sustainable way. So it's less about my health and more about the environment. So that's sort of an interesting trend that we'll have to watch and see. I want to do another poll as we roll into our next slide. And this poll will ask sort of what is the specific eating approach that you've tried. So when that pops up, you'll see that we've sort of pre-selected certain ones, and you might not see the one that you tried on there. And if so, again, feel free to chat it, because I'm super curious to read that when we're done and see if there are some that you haven't, that we didn't list. I narrowed it to a certain number of them so that, again, we can compare with sort of the general consumer data that we have. So that's why you'll see that list is limited, but I know that people are always trying and finding new things. So again, I'm just sort of watching that information roll in. Thanks again for participating. We've got about 60% of the audience, and it looks like that's good. We're stable there. Okay, so I'll end the polling and share the results with all of you. So it looks like the top diet that the most of you, or excuse me, a greater number of you have tried than other diets is that low carb. But there's also a fair number that have tried vegetarian and intermittent fasting, and maybe even a juice cleanse or a detox. So that's actually really interesting. If we go to the next slide, you'll see the data that I have for that sort of general consumer audience. Similarly, low carb diet is the one that sort of pops to the top, and vegetarian is here as well. So a lot of similarities between the two. Obviously, as a group, you're a much smaller sample size than the data for this, so we'll probably see a little bit of some swings, but it's sort of interesting to see some of the similarities. On this slide, I just wanted you to take a couple of notes. So the first thing is that there's a couple of there's a wide variety of diets that people have tried. So any one of these isn't huge in the general population, but you can see that people are sort of migrating towards, I would call it a more personalized approach, right? So the diet that's best for me might not be the diet that's best for you, or the diet that I can adhere to maybe isn't the one that you can. And so you see a lot of variety here. And even though none of these are huge, I think it's really important that we think about what we can offer from a restaurant perspective because of what we call the veto vote, right? So you might have a group of 4 people that are planning to go out to eat together, and one of them is gluten-free. And so they're probably going to look for a place where they can all find something to eat together, and a place that offers a gluten-free option or a vegetarian option might be the place that we all decide to go together so that we can accommodate these sort of eating preferences together. And so that's why I think it's important that we continue to understand these and learn more and more about them. What I'd like to do now is, if we go on to the next slide, talk a little bit about where we see these popping up in terms of menu offerings. So I took a look at the data essential data that shows sort of what terms are showing up on menus. And I've highlighted a number of them that we'll talk about in a little bit more detail. So I bucketed them sort of according to sort of how they're showing up on menu. So the first one I just want to touch on is diets that are sort of small, but really critical for certain segments. So here I've put low sodium. So you didn't see that on the previous slide as one that many consumers are seeking, but it's really important for a number of consumers. So it's sort of low on menus and flat, but I think really critical for certain segments to address. Then in the middle section, I've got some that are most commonly found on menus, and this is probably not super surprising, but vegetarian and gluten-free are the terms that show up most often on menus. So about a third of menus have those. And then the ones I want to touch on that are smaller but appear to be growing quite rapidly are the dairy-free, vegan, and plant-based. And that plant-based growth number that you see is enormous because it's on a pretty small base. And I will mention that this sort of methodology of looking at the terms that show up on menus isn't perfect, right? So there's many ways to eat plant-based. We'll talk about that in a minute. But the term plant-based is becoming more and more common on menus, and that's what this is showing, that it wasn't a very common term, and now it's growing on menus. And the other thing that I'll mention is, as we've gone through the pandemic together over the last year, you've probably heard a lot more about plant-based eating. It seems to be sort of an interesting discussion point as people have been thinking about how to eat for their health. So nearly a quarter of consumers report that they're eating more plant-based products in the last year. And so that one I think is a really good one to keep our eye on, even though it's not a very common menu term today. So let's sort of talk about each of these and what they are and some of the motivations behind them. The first one that we'll talk about on the next slide is that low sodium diet. So this one is usually recommended by a doctor for someone that's trying to manage a medical condition. So conditions like high blood pressure or kidney disease or heart failure often get a recommendation for a low sodium diet. And as a dietitian, this is one I do like to bring people's attention to, because you might not know this, but about half of the adult US population has high blood pressure. So this is an area where we all could probably be eating a little bit less sodium, even if we're not calling out sodium on the menu. But for those of you that are, so what consumers would be looking for, they're trying to stick to a total daily sodium intake of 2,300 milligrams or lower. It can vary based on your specific doctor's recommendation. But if you think about that, it's about a teaspoon of salt. So it's not very much. So these folks are going to be looking for low sodium seasonings that are not coming from salt, and those kinds of things. I would recommend, if you do want to have low sodium dishes available, that you understand exactly how much sodium you think is in that build so that you can share that with people and they can decide if that fits into their diet or not. If we go on to the next slide, we'll talk about a little bit about gluten-free and vegetarian, which are the ones that are most commonly terms that you can find on menus today. So you're probably familiar with them, but I will touch on them just in case. So that gluten-free diet is a diet that eliminates gluten. And gluten is a protein that's found in wheat, rye, and barley. And this diet could be motivated by a health condition. So folks that have a condition called celiac disease actually have an immune reaction when they eat gluten. Your body reacts to that protein. And so avoiding it is a way that they can not have that reaction. There's also a thing called non-celiac gluten sensitivity. That people aren't diagnosed directly with celiac disease, but really do have a reaction to gluten that they have. And so between celiac disease and this non-celiac gluten sensitivity, we're talking maybe 4% of the population. So it's not a huge number, but there are a number of other people who are seeking gluten-free diets just because they think it helps them feel better. And so that's why you saw that this was one of those ones that was about 10% of people say that they've tried this. This is one that I always say is really important because there is a medical condition involved. Not only do you want to make sure that your recipe build doesn't have gluten in it, but that you're also making sure that you're not getting any contamination from gluten sources in the kitchen. A lot of these folks that have celiac are really sensitive to really small levels of gluten. And so really managing the entire process to ensure that you're not accidentally introducing gluten into someone's dish, if you've called it gluten-free, is really, really important. The other one on here is the vegetarian diet. And I saw briefly in the chat, someone commented that they wouldn't necessarily call the vegetarian diet a trend. And I think that's a really fair call out. I actually found the first reference for the term vegetarian in the 1850s, but certainly people have been eating in a vegetarian way for a lot longer than that. So I think that audience member is 100% correct, and I completely agree. This diet is all about eliminating animal flesh, basically, right? So a meat-free, fish-free, poultry-free diet. Individual vegetarians may choose to include or not include eggs and dairy, but often those are sort of allowed, if you will, for most people that are thinking about being a vegetarian. And here, the motivations may be something around health or animal welfare. I would say the two most common ones that I see, but certainly now there are environmental concerns that people are thinking about when they're choosing to follow a vegetarian diet, and even certainly some religious motivations around this vegetarian diet. So there's a lot of potential motivations here in this diet that's really been around quite a long time and is, I think it was around 10% of the population has tried it as well. If we go to the next slide, we'll talk a little bit about some of those more emerging terms that we've seen on menus. And I think the interesting thing to note here is if you look at them, they all involve sort of reducing animal products or animal ingredients in some way. So between vegetarian, plant-based, dairy-free, and vegan, you see quite an interplay there. And I think Maggie mentioned at the beginning that it can be sort of confusing. Which of these terms should I use? Which ones are going to be the most motivating? And here I think we're just going to have to continue to watch the trends to find out. For me, vegetarian is a big one that people are already looking for and trying. So that one's a really obvious one to have some options. And then these other ones, it's really more about knowing your audience. So if we talk a little bit about that plant-based and flexitarian diet, this terminology of plant-based hasn't been around as long as vegetarian. And so I think you will see, if you haven't already, that there's not disagreement's not the right word, but there's a different conception among different people about what a plant-based diet is. For some people, it means the same thing as vegan. For some people, it means the same thing as vegetarian. For some people, it simply means that I'm eating less meat, but I'm eating more plants. And I'm not trying to eliminate meat. I'm just sort of more balancing out by eating more plants and less meat. And that's part of what makes this term a little bit more confusing, I think, for people. I think it's more approachable for some folks than vegetarian, which is why you'll start to see sort of plant-based grow, because it's talking about what you can eat instead of talking about what you're eliminating. It's more about eating plants than anything else. But this is a term that is growing on menu. And I think you especially see it as it relates to plant-based alternatives. So it's a plant-based milk or a plant-based meat. And that seems to be a really comfortable way for people to use it. The motivations here are health, I would say, is probably the #1 reason that someone is thinking about trying a plant-based diet, with sustainability or environmental impact being another one that's really motivating people to think about plant-based diets. Dairy-free diets, we also saw as a term that's growing on menus. And here, there are a couple of potential motivations. So one is an allergy. So some folks have an allergy to a protein in milk. That's about 2% of the population from what we know. There's also the potential for a lactose intolerance. So some people are intolerant to the natural sugar that's found in dairy, that lactose. And that could be a fair chunk of the population from what we know. So folks that have a milk allergy are trying to completely eliminate dairy, of course, whereas those with a lactose intolerance might be able to manage some dairy, but not all. And so this one sort of is a big group of potential motivations. Here again, if I would recommend, if you're going to call something dairy-free on the menu, that because there is a potential allergy that someone might have if they see that, that you again build that dish to be dairy-free, but then also make sure that you're managing any potential sources of cross-contamination in the kitchen. The last one here is the vegan diet. And again, this diet has been around for longer, isn't just a short-term trend. The first reference of vegan that I found was in the 1940s, but certainly people have been eating this way before we called it vegan with that terminology. And this one you'll always see in the data is a fairly small group of people that are eating vegan regularly, but there might be people who are trying vegan just for a meal or for a short amount of time, and then they're going back to their regular diet. And so the vegan term can be something that people are sort of having now and trying, and then they're going back to a regular diet and sort of flexing in and out of. It tends to be most popular among a younger population, so it's sort of influencing the way that people are thinking about food. And so the one thing I would recommend for all of these actually is if you're going to label it on the menu, to lead your menu dish with something that tastes delicious, or it sounds like it's going to taste delicious. So I wouldn't lead with vegan or plant-based anything, right? I'd sort of have that as a term that comes later and name whatever the dish is, something that's really going to drive that taste perception, because people are going to sort of think about how it tastes first and then whether or not it meets their dietary recommendations. So I think, I guess I didn't go through exactly what a vegan diet is. I think you probably all know that, but I've got it listed here that it's a meat-free, fish-free, free from all animal products, so no dairy, no honey even from bees. And a lot of people who are vegan, who are motivated by the animal welfare part of it, even care deeply about how the ingredients are processed, right? So they want to know how the sugar was processed, because sometimes it's processed through bone char, and that would be a concern for someone that's motivated by that animal welfare piece. So if you're going to call something vegan, you might just want to really understand where your ingredients are coming from and how they're being processed, in case you get a person that really knows a lot and is going to ask questions about that. And I think now what I'll do is I'll turn it over to Maggie to talk a little bit about that delicious piece that I just mentioned. We've talked about some of the details of the diet, but I think it's time to talk about taste and how you sort of bring it together into life. So Maggie, let me turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Cassie, that was great. Thank you for going into so much depth and detail on all of those diets. We do have one question that I wanted to ask you before we move on to some of the tools. Jeffrey is asking, is there a recommended meat intake for an adult? And I think this would probably be per day.
Yeah, so what the the quantity of meat to eat per day depends on sort of your activity level and your dietary intake and sort of how you balance throughout your day. So what I would recommend is that you visit choosemyplate.gov. So that is the government's website where they sort of recommend the quantities of all of the food groups to have in a day. And you could sort of see how many ounces they would recommend for someone of your gender and activity level, because it really can vary. As much as we all like to think like that nutrition facts panel is exactly what everyone should have, it's actually much more variable based on you as an individual. So I would recommend that you go there. And what you'll find is that it'll talk about protein foods. So it's not necessarily meat, right? It'll be, you could have a plant source of protein, you could have a meat source of protein. It'll just give you that total quantity of protein foods, and then you build your day according to whether or not you want it to be meat or an plant-based source of protein, if you will.
Great, thank you. I have one more question. I think I'm going to pass over to you,
Yeah.
Cassie. What are some suggestions if you live in an area or find it difficult, especially now where there may not, all operations might not be open? If you're finding it really hard to find these selections on menus, do you think it's fair enough to start asking more for operators to carry some of these?
Yeah, that's what I always recommend, is to ask for the things that you need if you're not finding them, right? That's how you're going to get them. If it's in the grocery store, ask for them and you need them because you're not seeing them. But the same thing from the restaurants that you really love. I think obviously now everyone has sort of simplified their, not everyone, but many operations have simplified their menu. And so you're not maybe finding the options that you used to, but I think asking is exactly the right sort of first step. And you know, if you're knowledgeable yourself about what you're looking for, there might be a role for you to play in sort of educating that operation that you're asking about, right? So I'm looking for a gluten-free diet. Do you have the ability to swap out this pasta for something else and make sure that it's not interacting with other things, right? There's some diets you might know more about than individual operations, but I think sort of asking and having that conversation is absolutely the right way to go.
I think that's awesome. Yes, thank you. All right, now I think we are going to, I'll move on, and I'm going to share some of the ways that Miners is addressing these dietary trends and providing new innovations and recipe inspiration, so you can set a table for everyone. Table for Everyone is the Miners pledge to extend what we do best, to continue to take the guesswork and the legwork out of delicious cuisine. At Miners, we like to help everyone invite everyone to the table with product solutions that satisfy a variety of eating styles, as well as that demand for flavor. We've recently launched 2 new tools on our website. If you go to flavormeansbusiness.com, you can download our Table for Everyone tools that I'm going to highlight here today before we get into our live demonstration. The first tool is a recipe inspiration brochure. We like to call it a roadmap for adapting specialized menus. And then the second one is a guide to these dietary preferences. And I'm going to highlight both of those now. This first one here is our brochure. It really helps you connect the Miners products with all the variety of eating styles, a lot that Cassie has highlighted here today. Within this brochure, you'll find, if you download it from our website, is different recipes and different tweaks that can be made to concepts to make them suitable for vegans or omnivores, vegetarians, and even gluten-free diners. So here in this first slide, you'll see a spinach artichoke Alfredo pizza. This highlights the Miners' new vegan Alfredo sauce. It is not commercialized yet, but will be out on the market in the back half of 2021. Chef Logan will give you a full demonstration of it in a really amazing pasta dish in a couple minutes. But I really just want to highlight that this tool, you know, we're taking something as simple as the pizza and showing, you know, you can keep it as we've shown it here is vegan. You can swap out the cheese if you want to make it just vegetarian, or you can swap out the crust for potentially a cauliflower crust to offer a gluten-free option. Another highlight we have in this recipe inspiration brochure is a roasted poblano grilled eggplant recipe. And again, that right side of your screen, you're seeing all those minor tweaks and helpful hints of ways that hopefully inspire you to make small changes on within application to make it suitable for these diners. I'm not going to give you all of these hints here right now, because I think that Chef Logan's going to go into further detail on this, but I also wanted to give you a highlight of our table for everyone, our guide to dietary preferences. This guide also is downloadable, and it really helps you identify all those dietary preferences and how they're growing on menus that Cassie walked us through today. In particular, one thing I wanted to call out is that it has a table for everyone Miners product guide. So within this product guide, you have a breakdown of all of the Miners products, from our bases to our from meat and veggie down to our flavor concentrates. And it highlights which of those products fall within the eating preferences of vegan, vegetarian, gluten-free, and low sodium. We've also taken the opportunity within this guide to highlight the most commonly asked about allergens, and that's going to be the dairy, the soy, and the eggs. So I urge you to take a look at that. We can probably I'll put a link in the Q&A, so you can have a link to Flavor Means Business, and so you can download those tools for yourselves. And as I mentioned, the brochure is available now. Throughout the year, we're going to continue adding new concepts to that, and new ideas and new small ways that hopefully will inspire you, and opportunities for you to continue to invite all diners to the table. Now I have a great opportunity to share Chef Logan. I'm going to stop sharing and let you see Chef Logan in our awesome kitchen here at the Nestle Professional Facility. Chef Logan is a culinary innovation chef. In a short time, Chef Logan has advanced from culinary apprentice at a Michelin one-star restaurant to lead culinary events at his alma mater, Johnson & Wales. Along the way, Chef Logan has taken advantage to participate in marquee events and competitions, including the Emeril Lagasse Golf Classic. As a product development chef here at Nestle Professional, Chef Logan's concepts have been featured on menus across the company. At Nestle Professional, he provides endless culinary inspiration to our partner chefs and to our operators. I'm thrilled that he could be part of our demonstration for you today, and I will let you take it away, Chef Logan. Thanks again.
Awesome. Thank you so much for the introduction. Hi, everybody. I'm Logan McCoy, Innovation Chef at Nestle Professional. Today, we're going to talk about two dishes. So one of them, we're going to be using our Miners vegan Alfredo. So I know that we've heard a lot today about different diets and things like that. So we're going to kind of work through some of the vegan Alfredo applications. And then we're also going to work on another dish, talking about that table for everybody, bringing everybody to the table. Everybody's looking for one common ground, and that's incredible flavor. And so that's what we're going to really deliver through some of these products today. So the second dish we'll be working on is a roasted poblano grilled eggplant. I know that you saw a little picture of it earlier. We'll kind of get into more of the table for everybody and how that fits everybody's needs a little later. But first, we're going to start with the Miners vegan Alfredo. So today what we're going to do is we're just going to do like an Alfredo creamed fragula. So we're just going to do, fragula is just a toasted pasta. Almost reminds me of like couscous. So it's going to give you that nice little bite. And then we're also going to include our Sweet Earth Mindful Chicken. So this is our soy protein-based meat alternative. So it looks just like whole muscle chicken. For us, we use this in a multitude of applications. For like barbecue chicken or like chicken sandwiches, we can put it in the paddle with the attachment. And then for this application, we're just going to sear it up. And so I'm going to go ahead and get this on. While we're waiting for that to heat up, here's the Miners vegan Alfredo. So it comes in a 32-ounce pouch, frozen, 6 to a case.
And while Chef Logan is highlighting the vegan Alfredo, I want to take a time to mention after the webinar, you will receive a survey from the ACF, and within that survey, there will be a question. And if you would like to receive a sample of the vegan Alfredo sauce or the Sweet Earth Mindful Chicken, you just answer yes and enter in that information, and we'll get that shipped to you.
Perfect. We're going to put a little oil in the pan. In the meantime, we're going to still let that heat up. I do want to talk about some of the characteristics of the sauce. So for this, what I really like about it, so it's creamy. It's perfectly put together. It's not separated. So this is an it's oat milk based. And what I like is the versatility of it. So whether you're thinking about it as a sauce, perfect. If you're thinking about maybe roasting or smoking sweet potatoes and you need something to help blend it, right? Using that Alfredo would be perfect. And we heard earlier too about keeping things, if it's going to be plant-based, keep it plant-based. And so this is a perfect option for things like that. I really like this too, in like a breakfast format too. Even things like a breakfast sausage gravy, right? If you can get a plant-based breakfast sausage, using that as your base, delicious, delicious. So we're just going to continue to let those go. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and add in the onions. We're just going to give those a little saute. Now we're going to cook those just until they're translucent. So maybe about a minute or two. Maggie, do we have any questions from the audience? All right.
We do not have any questions right now. I wanted to take a minute to just to remind the audience that Chef Logan did comment that this vegan Alfredo is crafted from an oat milk base. It's a ready to eat sauce, so there's no cook step required in this vegan Alfredo sauce. I know used it in a multitude of applications from pasta, which you're seeing today. He's also used it as a base for soup, as a base for pizza. And we've really found that it is really versatile but also provides great umami flavor without that dairy that a traditional Alfredo does. And we really think that this is a great complement. If you're already serving the Alfredo in your operation, this is not a replacement of, but a complement to an Alfredo that you're currently serving in your operation.
Yeah. So what we did while Maggie was talking, so we did add some garlic. We're going to hit it with just a little bit of white wine, but I do want to just add on real quick to what Maggie was talking about as well. The versatility of the product is one that we really pride ourselves on. So we've done things like enchiladas where we've taken the sauce, we've added in our chipotle flavor concentrate, and then we've, done that over enchiladas. So, it's very versatile. It takes on flavors really well. Maybe like toasted spices. All right, so now what we're going to do, we've got all that working. So we're really just developing flavor, right? So we've got the chicken, the mindful chicken. We've got the onions and garlic. We've reduced the wine down. And what we're going to do is we're going to add in the pasta. Now I'm adding fergula. So this is full of gluten, but because I'm going to eat it for lunch today. But you can also use things like chickpea pasta, or I saw something the other day where there's a black bean pasta and things like that. So there's other options out there if you wanted to keep it completely gluten-free. So I'm going to add that right in. Not going to cook this too long since I've already pre-cooked the pasta. I do have some chiffonade spinach that I'm going to throw right in there as well. Get that, let that wilt for a second. And then we're going to go ahead and add the Alfredo. So again, really smooth. Really has that Alfredo flavor.
Chef, while you're working there, I'm gonna just ask a couple questions. Can the vegan sauce boil? Have you noticed that it separates when it's boiled or sticks to the sticks?
It doesn't separate when it's boiled, and it doesn't stick from what I've seen. So what we've done is we've done a roasted tomato soup in the past. We held it in a bain marie. And it seems that
Chef, this is Matt, the producer. I'm going to interject real quick. We're just having a little bit of problem with your audio.
In a hot box, and they seem to do things like chicken broccoli Alfredo. We've sauteed it all. Hot box.
1 second, I think we're having a little bit of an audio issue.
Yeah, Chef, your audio is really muddy right there. So if you can give that answer again, but we want to just test your audio real quick. Let's make sure we can hear you, because
Can you just
give me a test one,
a
two,
little
three.
test one,
Yeah,
two, three?
Test. Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir. If you'll go ahead and answer that question again,
Hello?
that
Yep.
way our audience can get it. Thank you.
That
How's
seemed
that?
to work. Can you just go ahead and answer that audio or that question again about boiling?
Yeah, for sure. So yes, we've boiled it before. So we've made soup with it. We've roasted sweet potatoes. We've blended it with that. We've also hot held it in a bain marie. We've also hot held it in a cabinet. It all seemed to work really well.
Thank you, Chef. We actually did have a question about the bain marie. I know we've done up to a 4-hour hot hold test and performed well.
Yeah, for sure.
We are having some issues with Chef's audio once again. Not sure what's
That's okay. All right, so now we just played it. So now it's just gonna be a simple garnish. So we're gonna just complement it with a little bit of olive.
Maggie, we are unable to hear Chef at the moment.
We're still not able to hear Chef Logan. So 1 second. Sorry about all these technical difficulties, everyone.
We will be right back with you. We are not going anywhere, but as we all know, Zoom is our life, and sometimes this happens during Zoom, and you don't hear from me unless something goes wrong, and that's why I'm on. We're going to get this fixed for you and get right back up with Chef Logan.
All right.
Can everybody hear me?
Still a little muddy.
Oh, no. So now I'm just kind of garnishing.
Does that work?
Sounded good to me.
Yes, that works.
Works? Perfect. All right, so I'm just kind of garnishing. So we went ahead, we plated it up, and then we just put some plant-based cheese. So again, just kind of keeping it all together with some plant-based cheese, olives, some roasted peppers, some chiffonade parsley on top. So that is our vegan Alfredo. Do we have any questions on the vegan Alfredo before I move on to table for everybody?
So the one of the questions is really about the mindful chicken. What is the base for the chicken?
So it's soy. It's soy protein.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And then more of the question on the flavor of the cheese. Does it have a cheese flavor? And I would comment that said, because it doesn't have a cheese, you don't notice an overall dairy flavor, but you do notice that there's an umami, a nutty flavor in the sauce. Any additions to that, Chef?
No, that's perfect. Nope, that's how it is. All right, so next what we're gonna do is we're gonna work on the table for everybody. So again, this is what we wanted to do is have one dish and then show how we can use it in a different, just different multitudes of applications for vegetarian and vegan, meat eaters and gluten-free. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with the marinade for the eggplant. So today I'm using the fire roasted Poblano flavor concentrate from Miners. A little product plug right there. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put a tablespoon in there. A little bit of black pepper, a little bit of oil. And then I'm just going to whisk this together. Set that aside. Now here I have an eggplant. So what we're going to do is we're just going to cut the eggplant into steaks. So what we're really trying to replicate for this vegetarian version is just that you can create things that are, we're just going to replicate a steak. So what we're going to do is we're going to cut these fairly thick.
Chef, we do have a question as product development. How involved are you in the development of these products? I would say very involved from start to finish. There is not one step of the development process that our chefs are completely immersed in.
Yeah, I agree. And one of the things that we really like to pride ourselves on is innovation through application. So doing things like exactly what we're doing today, just really showcasing and showing the versatility of our products and how many different applications it can be used in, especially when we talk about versatility across menus and day parts, many different diets and things that we've heard about already today. So basically what I'm doing right now is I'm just going to spread this on. And then typically what I would do is I would let this marinate for about an hour or so, really kind of let that poblano and oil get in there. And with the help of TV Magic, ta-da. So what I like about this is that you can still see the particulate. So you take all that time to to roast and to peel these poblanos. Where here, you can take that same great flavor and use it instantaneously. So now we're going to get into the salad. So what I'm going to do here is we're just going to create like a little grain salad. So this is just some cooked off farro, some quinoa, and we're just going to add that right in there. We have some fresh chopped vegetables, so celery, red onion, red bell pepper, tomatoes, and some kale. So the other thing too is, we talk about table for everyone and, making these menus across the spectrums, right? So for this, you could still go back and do a ribeye, but instead of using salt to season, you could use, Miners beef base, or if you wanted to do pork, you could use Miners pork base. This dish is already vegetarian, so this is good to go. But if you wanted to make it vegan, you could take out the pesto, maybe add in some fresh herbs or a fresh herb dressing of your choice. You could do things like that. Today, what we're going to do is we are going to use our basil pesto. So this is one of my favorite products. So frozen pouch. It comes in a frozen pouch. It's ready to eat. And what we're going to do is we're just going to dress the salad real simply.
We had a question, is the Poblano product currently in the marketplace? Yes, it currently is. If you have more questions about this, please reach out to myself or any of your, if you have a local Miners chef, please reach out to them.
And I like the Poblano because it gives you just such depth of flavor. But then again, that's with any of the flavor concentrates, like the roasted garlic is really good. Chipotle, any of those really give you that depth of flavor. All right, so we mix the salad up, and we're just going to go ahead and we'll just plate this up right here. And if you want, you could always add a little bit more pesto. And there you have it.
Looks delicious, Chef.
Thank you, Chef Logan, for those great demos. It was great to see how diverse and versatility that we're able to provide with those Miners products. Thank you, everyone, for being so engaged and offering great questions. Sorry about those audio issues I think we're having. We appreciate having you all here today. And again, if you have questions about Miners, please reach out to a local Miners sales representative. And with that, I will pass it back to Jackie.
Well, thank you very much, and a huge round of applause as we thank Maggie, Cassie, and Chef Logan. Fabulous demonstration. We appreciate you taking the time to share your culinary insights with the ACF community of culinary professionals today. It looks fabulous. I wish you could deliver. Miners wants to hear from you. So as Maggie mentioned, be on the lookout for the survey that you'll receive with the recording of this presentation. You'll also need to complete that survey in order to earn your CEH. And we hope that you'll join us for an upcoming webinar. We have our next webinar on Monday, March 29th, where you'll learn more about seafood and seafood ID and a presentation and demo live from the Union Oyster House in Boston by the AAC chair, Chef Rico DeFranzo. For more inspiration, for culinary news, or to register for upcoming webinars, please check out our website, wearechefs.com. On behalf of the ACF National Office, thank you again to Miners for this opportunity, and thank you all for joining us today. See you soon.
Thank you.